The Czech Republic has roughly one online store for every 220 people, not households, people. That's the kind of number you'd expect from a global tech powerhouse, not a country with just 10.9 million people. And yet, somehow, this small Central European nation has built e-commerce companies that operate across half of Europe, run delivery networks that outperform their own national postal service, and in some cases have automated parts of their operations more aggressively than companies many times their size. What's strange is that Czechs don't actually shop online dramatically more than the rest of Europe. The unusual part isn't the customers, it's the companies. So how did a country smaller than London end up producing some of Europe's most efficient online businesses? And did the Czech Republic accidentally discover the playbook for how small countries compete with giants? The numbers. Let's start with scale. The Czech e-commerce market is worth roughly $8.4 billion in 2026 and is projected to grow toward $10.7 billion by 2031. There are more than 50,000 registered online retailers in the country. Again, that's roughly one online store for every 220 people. Internet penetration sits around 89%, with close to 9.6 million people shopping online regularly. And at the top of the pile sits Alza.cz, the country's largest e-commerce retailer, generating somewhere between $2.6 and $3.8 billion in revenue during 2025, depending on which research firm you use. Either way, that's a serious business, built largely inside one relatively small European country. But the real question isn't how big these companies became, it's how they got so good in the first place. Meet the Czech champions. So if this is really happening, who are the companies pulling it off? First, there's Alza.cz. What began as a small electronics store in Prague back in 1998 has grown into what many people describe as the Czech Republic's version of Amazon for consumer electronics. Today, it operates across Slovakia, Germany, Austria, and Hungary. Then there's Rohlik Group. Rohlik didn't just expand internationally under one brand. It built local versions of the business across multiple countries and eventually became important enough that Amazon partnered with it in Germany to expand Amazon's grocery offering. What's especially interesting is Rohlik's obsession with automation. Its warehouse systems reportedly reduced labor requirements by as much as 95%, helping make 15-minute grocery delivery possible in cities like Prague and Brno. Next comes Packeta Group, the company behind the Zásilkovna parcel network. In 2021, it became the first company in Europe to introduce robotic parcel sorting at its depots. Today, Zásilkovna reportedly handles a larger share of Czech parcel volume than the Czech Post itself. And then there's Notino, a cosmetics retailer that quietly expanded into dozens of European markets and became one of the continent's largest online beauty businesses. 4 different sectors, 4 different companies, the same pattern. Start small, automate aggressively, expand early. And yet, despite all that success, Chinese giant Temu has already become one of the largest online retailers in the Czech market, which tells you something important. Being good isn't enough. You have to keep getting better. The invisible layer. But the most important part of this story isn't any of those companies. It's the ecosystem underneath them. Take Heureka.cz. It's one of the most used price comparison platforms in the country, and it's brutal. Every retailer's prices are visible side by side in real time. If you're even slightly more expensive than a competitor, customers can see it instantly. That level of transparency forces businesses to operate efficiently from day one. There isn't much room for lazy pricing. There isn't much room for operational waste. Then there are the payment companies. Firms like Twisto and Lemonero built buy now, pay later systems specifically designed for the Czech market, helping retailers reduce friction at checkout and increase conversion rates. Most people outside the country have never heard of these businesses, but they're part of the reason the larger e-commerce players became so competitive. Before Czech companies expanded internationally, they spent years operating inside one of the most transparent and competitive online retail environments in Europe. That turns out to be excellent training. Why this actually happened? So what's really going on here? A few things lined up almost perfectly. First, the home market is too small to hide your mistakes. With fewer than 11 million people, a Czech e-commerce company can only grow so far before it hits a ceiling. Expansion isn't some distant ambition, it's a survival strategy. Second, geography helped. The Czech Republic sits in the middle of Europe. Germany, Austria, Poland, and Slovakia are all next door. A warehouse outside Prague can reach a huge part of Central Europe within a day or two. Most countries don't have that advantage. Third, automation became the equalizer. Czech companies couldn't outspend Amazon. They couldn't outspend the largest German retailers, so they focused on efficiency instead. Robotics, automated sorting, smarter logistics, anything that could help them compete on delivery speed and price without competing on scale. And fourth, consumer expectations became a forcing function. Czech online shoppers expect rapid delivery, accurate tracking, and constant communication. If retailers fail to deliver, customers leave. That sounds painful, but it forced domestic companies to reach a higher operational standard before they ever faced international competition. Put those four factors together and you get something powerful. A small market, a central location, heavy automation, demanding customers. That's not just a recipe for building good e-commerce companies, it's a recipe for building export-ready ones. The other side of the story. Now, before we turn this into a fairy tale, it's worth slowing down for a second. Online retail penetration in the Czech Republic still sits broadly in line with much of Europe. Czechs aren't dramatically more obsessed with online shopping than everyone else. What's unusual isn't the demand, it's the supply. And there are real challenges ahead. Temu's rapid growth shows how quickly low-cost international competitors can gain market share. Online grocery remains one of the hardest businesses in retail. Building ultra-fast delivery infrastructure across multiple countries is expensive. Much of that growth has historically been supported by investor capital rather than massive profits. And then there's consolidation. Mall Group, once considered one of the Czech e-commerce success stories, was acquired by Polish giant Allegro as part of a broader regional expansion strategy. Which raises an interesting question. Is this a story about Czech dominance? Or is it a story about Czech companies becoming extremely attractive pieces in somebody else's pan-European strategy? The answer may end up being both. The takeaway. Here's where I land on this. The Czech Republic didn't become an e-commerce powerhouse because its citizens love online shopping more than everyone else. It became one because its companies didn't have the luxury of staying local. When your home market is small, expansion stops being optional. It becomes necessary. And when you're competing against larger neighbors with deeper pockets, efficiency becomes non-negotiable. The result is a generation of companies that learned to automate earlier, expand earlier, and operate more efficiently than many of their larger competitors. And that's the bigger lesson here. Small markets don't necessarily produce smaller companies. Sometimes they produce companies that learn how to scale faster. The Czech Republic may have accidentally discovered a blueprint for how smaller countries compete with giants. Whether these businesses eventually dominate Central Europe or become valuable pieces inside larger regional empires is still an open question. But either way, they've already proven something important. Being small can be a disadvantage, or it can be the pressure that forces you to become exceptional. And the Czech e-commerce industry might be one of the clearest examples of that anywhere in Europe. So, next time you order something online and it arrives the same day with perfect tracking and seamless delivery, there's a decent chance the company delivering it is using a playbook the Czechs were forced to figure out years ago.